there, my friends, and welcome back to my channel. I'm really glad to have you here and just share some ideas today about how you can reach your goals. And really, even deeper than just reaching your goals, I want to teach you how to live with intention. See, it's easy to let life just happen to us, but it takes work and really mindset changes to live with intention and really make the goals that we have and the dreams that we have actually come to life. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. The first thing that you need to do whenever you are setting goals and wanting to live with intention is to begin with a clear vision. And the way that you do that in the right way, because you can have vision and you can plan out your life and all of that, but you have to first make sure that you determine what your core priorities are. So begin to envision the goals that you have and the dreams that you have, but make sure that they're still anchored by those core priorities in your life. So the first thing would be to figure out those priorities, and then I want you to make a list of goals. And these goals should be very specific. They need to make sure that they line up with your priorities and line up with God's Word. And then after you set these goals, I want you to commit your life to the Lord. And what I mean by that isn't just salvation, which that's important, but I want you to make the conscious decision to commit every day to God. So I want you to commit to moving forward to the goals that He has set into your heart and the desires that He's put in your heart. So that means every day waking up knowing that you have goals that you want to reach, knowing that you want to move forward in becoming the woman that God wants you to be. And that takes commitment. So all of that kind of stems from knowing what your vision is and creating a vision for your life. So every year I actually create a vision board, and as we get to the end of the year, I'll be sharing details on how I do that. But it's a vision board that I have up in front of me all the time, and I have pictures of the goals that I have. And as I meet those goals, I like to turn the photos around so that the goals that are left are very up in front and center. They're showing right up in my list of things. And some of my goals are very dependent on me taking action. Other goals are what I like to call faith goals. So those goals are things that I'm believing God for. There might not be anything specifically that I could do or a lot of things that I could do to make these things come to pass, but I can pray and believe that that is the case. And you might be wondering what kind of goals that those are. One of those goals for me this year was to finalize the adoption of this little baby that we've had in our life. We've had him for several years and we were trying to get the adoption finalized. We've done everything possible that we can do, and in my goal setting and my visions this year, having him officially adopted was a big goal for me. Now, I did everything that I possibly could. We filled out all the paperwork, we've done everything we were supposed to, but at the end of the day, it was a faith goal. It was a goal that I could pray towards and believe the Lord for. So I want you to examine the goals that you have in your life and then determine, okay, are these lining up with my priorities? Is this goal the right time for me? Is this a faith goal? Is this something I need to believe God for? So to give you some examples, several years ago I set some goals and I followed this process, and that was really the beginning of me setting goals and then really living them out with intention. And so the first 3 goals that I did in this process many years ago, the first was reading through the entire Bible. So I had a goal to grow closer to the Lord, and I believe and still believe that if you want to be closer to the Lord, you have to get into His Word. And so I made a goal to read through the Bible in 90 days. That was a goal that I had, and my core priority behind that goal was to further my relationship with the Lord, to deepen my relationship with Him, to get more knowledge of His Word. And so that was one of the goals. The second goal that I had was to create a more peaceful home for my family. Now, that was a specific goal, but my core priority behind that goal was to have a better relationship with my family. I wanted to create a home of peace for my family. I wanted my home to be a place they wanted to come to at the end of the day. I wanted to have a home that really facilitated communication with my family and those deep relationships. And then the last goal that I had was to better my 5K running time. At the heart of this goal was a priority for my health. So I wanted to get faster at my running. I wanted to better my health, and that was the core priority that led to my goal of having a faster running time. So as you are envisioning the future, because really that's what this step is beginning with a clear vision, I want you to start envisioning the person that you will be whenever you meet these goals. So often we think that we have to meet a goal and then we become the person that has that goal met. But really, setting goals and living with intention is all about becoming the person that has attained that goal. So it's about the journey and the process that you are on to become that person. So I want you to start thinking about who that future version of yourself is. And that means thinking ahead and saying, okay, if I want to be a woman who reads the Bible in 90 days, what does that woman, what does that version of me have to do in order to get there? Well, it leads us really into our next step, which is building a solid foundation with preparation. So after you have your vision made, you maybe have a vision board set up, the next step is to plan out some steps to take to get there. Now I want you to kind of think about whenever you take a trip. When we are having a vacation, we begin to plan every detail of that trip, right? So we plan where we're going to go, we plan how we're going to get there, are we going to fly, are we going to drive, we look at the prices, we look at where we're going to stay, in what hotel we're going to stay at, we look at the weather to see what to pack, the temperature, all of that, right? And if we are that meticulous about planning a vacation or planning just 1 week of our life, how much more should we meticulously plan our days? Because how we spend our days determines where our life goes. And so if we want to change the path of our life, we have to change something that we do every day. And really that is a phrase that I heard from John Maxwell, where he said, you won't change anything in your life until you change something that you do daily. And I love that quote because it shows the significance of the small changes that we have to make. If you don't plan your days, then your days are going to control you instead of you controlling them. And if you want to live with intention, that means you have to be able to control your time and your efforts instead of just allowing life to happen to you. So part of doing this is creating a plan, creating action steps to take, and these plans really need to be measurable. So you need to be able to tell, did I meet this plan? Did I follow through with this? They need to be specific, and I really want to encourage you to break down all the steps that you need to take to reach your goals into very small steps. And the reason for this is because as you meet small steps, first you don't get overwhelmed and you don't get just kind of bogged down by this procrastination that comes whenever we have this big goal to meet. But if you break things down into small steps and you take those steps, each time that you check off one of those things, you are invested a little bit more into your goal. So say you have 10 steps that you want to take. Instead of just saying, let's just use the example of losing weight. Say you had one step on your list that said to lose 50 pounds. What if you broke that one step down, that one goal, down into 100 different steps that you had to take? And maybe one of those steps was researching a pair of running shoes to get, researching how to, start running a 5K. Maybe the next step is to research what kind of foods would work for you. If you create really small steps, then each time you accomplish a step, you're that much closer to your goal, and it becomes harder and harder to revert back to your old ways because you've already invested so much into that goal. So I hope that makes sense to you. But in you're planning, I want you to get really specific about the actions that you want to take. So going back to the example that I just shared, the first one that I had was to read more of the Bible. That's a really vague goal. So you want to break it down. For me, that was, I want to read the Bible in 90 days. Whenever I was creating steps for this, I had to find a reading plan. I had to download the Bible on my iPad, so that way I knew I had it no matter where I was. I had to make it easy to read the Bible anytime, and that's why I chose to put it on my iPad. I had to add the reading plan to my calendar. I had to look at my calendar and determine the time that was best for me each day to commit to reading for half an hour or 40 minutes a day to reach this goal. So as you break down all those things, after you find the reading plan, after you put it into your calendar, after you find the place to sit whenever you're going to be reading the Bible or wherever, as you mark those things off, you're that much closer, that much more prepared to meeting your goals. Going back to those other examples, one of mine was to create a peaceful home for my family. So in that case, I sat down and decided I wanted to make more meals at home. So I started making lists of meals that I could make. Meals that were actually simpler at first because I wanted to have more time with my kids. So that meant researching slow cooker meals. That meant researching how to make easy meals or prep ahead or freeze meals. Another thing that I wanted to do was to create an evening routine. So many years ago, maybe 10 years ago or so, I started an evening routine that really facilitated bringing peace into my home because I wasn't rushing around. People weren't wondering if they had clean socks because I had a routine that I consistently followed. And I also did this for my kids whenever they were older. So they have routines in the morning and evening that they follow. That's not too many things, maybe 5 or 7 things that they do in the evenings and the mornings that really help to bring peace to our home. That means making their lunches the night before school. That means they would even pack the diaper bag for the baby. They had specific things that they did, and then I would throw in some fun things like reading to them before bed or even having, hugs and kisses before bed, being on their routine in the evenings. And having that really made a difference. Another thing that I put on my preparation list for that was to wake up earlier. So having all these things on my list, decluttering every day was another one that was on there. But as I added all these specific things, I was able to create an action list for me to take that broke down this big goal, this maybe a vague goal that I had of creating a more peaceful home. Having those action steps simplified it for me so I didn't have to think about it. I just followed the steps and now my home is very peaceful. Now, as I'm even recording this, there's not a piece of dirty laundry in my home because we have a routine. My kids had a really easy morning before school. We sat and were able to chat as we had breakfast because of routines that we had created, that I created many years ago. So I want you to see that it's not necessarily about that big goal. It's about creating small steps that help you to get there. And then to share the last one about the 5K, I shared a little bit of like picking out shoes or creating a strength training plan, maybe finding a Couch to 5K app on your phone, whatever it is, whatever your goal is, break it down into manageable pieces. And then the last step is to take action. So you can envision the future all you want, you can plan all you want, but until you take action, you're not going to see any results. And I will always like to share with my clients a story about a surfer. So I want you to imagine a man who is ready to go. He is a surfer. He imagines all the ways that the waves are going to come. He imagines all of the plans. He has all these goals for places and tides and everything that he wants to try and beaches that he wants to surf on. So he has that clear vision. Then he has the preparation planned out. So he has purchased all the gear, he has planned out, he's gone and talked to people who have surfed, and he's planning all these steps. And then he never visits the ocean. He never gets in the water. Without action, all the vision in the world and all the preparation in the world isn't going to get you anywhere. So that's part of living with intention. That's part of saying, okay, I have made my intentions and now I'm going to live them out. I have made my plans, now I'm going to take action. And after you have determined your priorities and you have made a plan, now it's the hard part, which is following through. So the tips that I've already given you are really to help facilitate taking action and following through. That's why having those small detailed steps to take, having that planned out ahead of time really helps you to follow through because they're small, they feel manageable. And then I want to just give you a couple of last tips on reaching your goals and living with intention. And the first is to own your goals. Own your vision. If you find yourself where you've kind of already followed the steps, you have preparation down and everything, and you're not finding that follow through, I want you to think about and maybe consider that you are owning your comfort more than you're owning your future. So often we prioritize comfort instead of freedom. We prioritize where we are and the ease and the convenience over valuing the accomplishments that we want to reach. And really, not just our accomplishments, but the things that God wants us to do, the things that God has called us to do. So a lot of times people resist change and they resist taking action because they don't think they'll be able to handle it. And if you have been listening to the podcast or you've seen me long enough, then you know that I believe that our thoughts can change our emotions. So if you have thoughts about resisting change and feeling like you're not going to be able to accomplish the change or the goals that you have set, then you need to start changing your mindset. As you change your mindset, then you'll be able to accomplish those goals because your mind is working with you instead of against you. Now, I want you to choose to think like the person that you will be when you accomplish these goals. Okay, think about that person. Think about that mom. Think about that version of you that you can start thinking like and feeling like and acting like now, because it's all about the process. It's about who you become as you reach your goals. Then the last just quick tip that I have for you is to forget about perfection. So forget about doing everything right every single time. Because if you are in an all or nothing state of mind, what's going to happen is you're going to fail, because we all do, because we're all human. And then as soon as you do, you give up on all the progress that you've already made. So what I want you to do is to kind of think in an 80-20 mindset. So think if 80% of the time I'm following through with these goals, I'm going to consider that as accomplished. I'm going to consider that as success. And then that gives 20% room for error. That gives 20% of room for mistakes or learning. And if you let go of your all or nothing thinking, what happens is you become curious about the mistakes that you make or the fails that you have, and instead of seeing them in a critical way, you start to be curious about them and figure out how you can overcome them. So if you have a running plan, say that 5K example I gave, if you have a running plan and on the third day you miss it, well, you can say, wait a second, that's my 20%, jump back on the next day, and then you can go back and say, why was that day so hard for me to get on board? Why was that so hard for me to get that run in? Well, maybe it was because the night before I didn't sleep so well, or because that day I had a big meeting and I was wanting to have some extra time to prepare my hair and makeup. Whatever it was, then you can look at that obstacle, learn from it, and then the next time maybe go to bed a little bit earlier, or maybe you plan your run after your presentation or whatever it is. If you come at your goals with all or nothing thinking, you're gonna see that time when you didn't run and just let that derail your whole process, instead of seeing that as a learning opportunity by utilizing that 80-20 mindset like I just shared. So I hope that this video helped you to come up with solutions to set your goals, because it's not enough just to set a goal, but we want to be intentional about it and really come at it with the most successful mindset possible. I hope that this helped you, and I will see you guys next time.